All right, and we are live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. Got the whole group back with us here on, I would say, a beautiful Monday, but it's kind of been a rough couple days here. It's a Monday. As you can see, Dennis here has got hashtag Justice for George. We'll touch on that really quick, as it is such a big thing going on in the country. I'll give my thoughts, and then you guys can obviously give yours. It's obviously a very sad and disappointing time seeing everything going on. Obviously, we all, I think, stand with George. All three of us do here with what happened. We're very sad with everything that's gone on. Obviously, I hope that we can get back to some kind of normalcy. It's almost sad to be wishing for more COVID-19 news than what's going on right now. But it needs to happen. Everybody that's talked about what Colin Kaepernick did, had we listened to him instead of making it about what it wasn't about, maybe we wouldn't have gotten this far. So it's sad to see that this is what's had to happen. Obviously, we hope everybody makes it out of here safe and okay with everything going on. I know there's a lot of news going on right now about what might happen here in the very near future with what our president is going to do. So that's it. I really don't have any other elegant way of doing that. Dennis, Matt, you guys have anything you want to add on what's going on right now?
I just like to think that as a people and as a country that we have the brain power to understand that killing people is bad and rioting and looting is also bad. So we've pushed a segment of society into a corner, it seems. And I say we as an old white guy. I have my life experiences, and I can't begin to, they say you don't know until you've walked a mile in somebody else's shoes. I don't think that you can really walk a mile in somebody else's shoes. So I have to reach out to the people I know that have experienced those things that have been so troubling and try to offer my support and make sure that I'm doing what I need to do, that I'm raising my kids the right way, that I'm doing what I need to do to be an ally to the disenfranchised communities.
Yeah, I work in a building that's downtown that's actually right next door to City Hall. So a lot of this weekend kind of watching the gatherings here in Colorado Springs and around the country, I think we've seen some really beautiful moments of people trying to come together and people trying to make their voices heard. And we've seen some really sad and horrific things. And it's hard to believe it's only been 5 months of 2020 with all that's gone on. And you just, hope better days are ahead for all of us in a lot of ways. Just praying for peace and for justice and for people to feel heard and seen. I think that's a lot of what these protests have been about, people who haven't felt heard or seen or cared about in a long time. And that should be deeply sad to all of us.
Yeah. I think it's fair to say the three of us, as much as we empathize with what's going on and want to be there. And as you just said, hear, listen, see these people. We can't walk, as Dennis said, a mile in their shoes. We haven't suffered some of the injustices that they have. So, all we can do is try and be there for them as much as possible. And we will. All three of us, I know, have been talking about different stuff on Twitter. And I know we will all continue to try and be active and help them out. And obviously, you guys are here for fantasy football, though, so we did want to just touch on that. Let's talk a little bit of fantasy football. We are going to continue our division series. We've got to finish up the NFC South today. We did the Falcons and Saints last week. We are doing, I'm all messed up here today, Tampa Bay and Carolina. So we'll knock out the rest of the NFC South today for today's episode. We're going to start with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who finished 7-9.
Buccaneers.
Sorry, the Tampa Bay. I thought about doing it, but I'm glad that someone brought up the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who finished 7-9 last year. They missed the playoffs. So I'll start off with you, Dennis. Either, neither, or both will be in Tampa in 2022. Brady and Bruce Arians.
Oh, I think they'll both be there. It would have to go terribly off the rails, and I don't think that either one of them will allow it. I think that they have the wherewithal to grow the relationship, to work together, to develop that offense so that it suits both of them. And they've got a lot of weapons. So if their defense takes another step like it started to do last year, there's no reason that they should not, have a 500 or better record. At least be competitive. And if they're competitive, you've got two very competitive guys in Brady and Arians, and they'll go out there and Brady wants to play 2 more years. As long as he's producing, I think he's going to play.
Yeah, I mean, Brady seems like the Benjamin Button of the NFL. In some ways, every time you want to count him out, it's hard not to. I think Arians is there next year no matter what. This is only his second year. I think him coming back, he's committed to trying to do something in Tampa Bay. I feel a little bit about Brady the same way as when we talk about Drew Brees. He could very well be there again next year. But what if they have an incredibly successful season, and he starts looking at, what do I want to do with my life? There's some thought that him moving down to Tampa Bay was an attempt to distinguish himself as a player aside from the organization and the coach, which has defined a lot of his career. If they had an incredibly successful season and he won, and he did basically kind of the Peyton Manning thing of winning 2 Super Bowls with 2 different teams after he had been cut free, I could see a scenario with him walking off into the sunset. I could also see him coming back. Brady seems to have his own internal drive in the way that a lot of great athletes like Jordan and others have had that aren't necessarily predicated on what happens day to day on the field. So I think at least Arians, I assume, will be back. It wouldn't surprise me if Brady is too.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I think regardless, I could see him, as you were just saying, Matt, him walking away if he won a Super Bowl, but I almost think he would for sure come back if he won it, just to see if he couldn't get another one. Because I think if they win it, chances are their team's going to stay pretty close to what it is now. They may lose a couple pieces here and there, and I think he may want to win 2 Super Bowls with Tampa Bay, because obviously if they did that, Bill's not winning it, so he's in a way kind of showing that argument, even though him and Bill don't want to talk about that argument about who's better. Some of the offseason moves that the Buccaneers have made so far this season, they exercised the 5th-year option on O.J. Howard, which I thought was interesting. Obviously, they brought in Tom Brady. Gronk came out of retirement. They drafted Keyshawn Vaughn and Tyler Johnson. And the expiring contracts after this year, Gronk, Howard, and Godwin will be an unrestricted free agent. The fantasy finishes for 2019. Brady finishes QB 13 with 257.8 points with the Patriots. Ronald Jones, RB 26, 141.2 points. Godwin, wide receiver 2, with 233.1 points. Evans, wide receiver 8, with 199.2. Howard, tight end 27, with 67.9 points. And Cameron Brate, tight end 28, with 66.4 points. So Brady, in all honesty, on the field in the NFL and for fantasy, has been in a little bit of a slow decline the past couple years. Do you guys see him taking a step forward, though, fantasy in 2020, having this team around him?
Well, he has the best set of weapons he's had in quite some time. And and this will shock you, Matt, I'm including Ronald Jones in that best set of weapons.
That might be a shock to both Matts.
It's not to say I think Jones is going to rush for 1,500 yards, but I expect Jones is going to have a better year than he had last year. I don't think Keyshawn Vaughn poses an existential threat. I think Jones will take another step in that offense. And so long as he's sufficient in pass protection, he'll keep getting some play. I don't think Howard's contract isn't expiring because they just re-upped him for his 5th year. So he's going to be there for the next 2 seasons now. But having Evans, Godwin, Gronk, O.J. Howard, Ronald Jones, Keyshawn Vaughn, Cameron Brate, Justin Watson, Tyler. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how sold I am on Tyler Johnson yet.
Don't you take my fantasy dart throw from me?
So, but it'll come down to, can the defense stay competitive, and will their offensive line keep Brady upright? And the challenge for the wide receivers will be, if Brady doesn't have time, he's going to be getting rid of the ball quickly because he's not going to take 50 sacks. He's just not going to do it.
They were one of the teams that took a first-round tackle, right? If I recall. Were they the one that got Wirfs?
Yes. No. Yes, they did take.
Because they were after you, right?
Yeah. Yes, they did. Yes.
So that's a good thing. Yeah. And if so, Brady should have probably a bounce back year. I don't know. I don't think I expect a 50 touchdown year, but he can go high 20s in the touchdowns, and he's not going to throw a ton of interceptions.
Yeah, I've changed in the last probably month and a half a little my thinking about.
I thought I noticed something different.
Yeah, when this first came out, I wasn't wildly in love with it, and in fact, I think when we talked about it once before, I thought there was some potential that they could be, and Matt may want to close his ears for a minute, like the 2019 Browns, kind of the team that just looks so good in the off season, but then maybe runs into a few problems and narrowly misses the playoffs.
I mean, that's a polite opinion, so I appreciate that. Just a slight,
hey,
just a couple slight missing the playoffs.
The Browns ended the season pretty strong. I mean,
it's debatable.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, look,
continue with your point, though.
I don't want to get kicked off the show this early on.
Yeah, I almost was over the mute button.
But I looked at their schedule and I really appreciated what Bob Lung put in the consistency guide. I read the Brady paragraph a couple of times. Brady was one of his undervalued guys, and looking at his history and looking at his stats, and he brought up a good point that we all pretty well think Chris Godwin and Mike Evans are going to be great in this offense. A lot of people are high on their tight ends or other ancillary weapons. It's impossible to think those guys are going to be good in fantasy without thinking that Tom Brady is going to be more than a stiff. So, him bouncing back to being a low-end quarterback 1, high-end quarterback 2 does make some sense. Tampa Bay, I don't think Tampa Bay is going to be, blowing anyone away like a 14-2, 13-3 season. But I have that site that I've shown you guys before that I like that plays the real schedule, and you can pick games game by game, week by week. I've run simulations a few times based on what I think, and I think they can be, one of those wild card teams and have a decent season. And they did invest in defense and offensive line, so I see Brady. It'd be hard to be much worse than what he had in New England.
Yeah, well, see, that's the funny thing, right? As I say that he was coming down, but then he finished his QB 13 last year, so that's technically right outside the elite. That's right outside the top 12 quarterbacks. So
and he had no line in New England either. Yeah. So not just crappy weapons, no line.
So it will be definitely interesting to see. So, Dennis, you kind of touched on my next question here a little bit, talking about Keyshawn Vaughn and Ronald Jones. Everybody's been talking about Vaughn, obviously, since the Buccaneers drafted him. They got a little bit of draft capital with him. But Rojo came on a little bit there in the second half of the season. Are people writing off Ronald Jones too soon? Should we buy all in on Keyshawn Vaughn, or should we try and see if Rojo holds on to the job?
Well, I guess it depends on what your definition of came on at the end of the year is.
He beat out Peyton Barber, which is something he had not been able to do his entire career so far.
So I went on to Fantasy Pros and I pulled up the stats because I thought, the second half of the season. So I started at week 9. I went week 9 through week 17, half point PPR. How did Rojo finish? What was his ranking for the rest of the season? And he never got higher than 23rd for the rank. So as I cut week 9 off, cut week 10 off, and made the span shorter and shorter, it wasn't like he moved up to a mid. He barely was creeping into RB2. So I don't know that I'm gonna put my expectations too much higher than that. I do think that he's going to get a little more opportunity. So finishing as somewhere between running back 17 and 20 is probably where I would put him. It is possible Vaughn comes in and gets it. The offense clicks. We've seen it happen before where the rookie running back comes in and they go with the hot hand, and then the rookie just keeps having the hot hand. So that could happen. I wouldn't count on. I'm not going to draft startups counting on that. If I'm going to take one of the two backs, I think ADP wise isn't
Jones is much further behind.
Much lower. Yeah.
So, there's something to be said for investing in the veteran that's been there and knows what's going on. And so I'm going to take Jones, expecting somewhere in the bottom half of the RB2 range if I'm taking him. So I'd prefer to have him as my RB3 on my team if I'm going to take him.
Yeah, honestly, that's where I'm at. RB3 would be my ceiling. I think when you're looking, I just pulled up his game splits. He had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games out of 16 where he had 70 or more yards, and he only had 2 games out of 16 where he had 80 or more yards. And he had a lot of games where he got decent amount of carries and couldn't do a lot with it. I just don't think it's been consistent. And I don't know if it's just him or if it happens to be a little bit of the offense and the way they're running it. I think what is appealing to me about Vaughn is they've talked about him maybe having a better role in the pass catching arena. And one of the Tampa Bay pre-draft, one of the Tampa Bay pieces that I had been stashing was Dare Ogunwale. For that reason, because I think we've seen before, if you think about Tom Brady and even his successful New England teams, he hasn't had a lot of power runners behind him, but he's had a lot of guys that were good in space that he would get the ball to, like a James White or something. And that was, to me, where I was like, I kind of want to get a receiving back. And I think post-draft, that's been kind of the thought of Vaughn. I like Vaughn as a pickup. I'm not expecting him to be like a 1,200-yard rusher either, but I think he could have some decent PPR value, and I think Jones will have some decent value too. I think if you're taking either of them above an RB3, RB4 level, you're just setting yourself up for some rough times. And I have some terrible teams where I drafted Vaughn that he's going to be my RB2, but I already know that I'm just like punting that position a little bit.
Yeah, see, that's where I'm torn, because I love Ronald Jones. As Dennis knows, we've been doing this podcast together since about his rookie year, and I was very high on Jones. But I also love Vaughn, and so it's very hard for me. I agree with what you were saying there, Matt. I do think he's going to be used more in the passing game at first. I think Ronald Jones, it's going to be his job to lose because of what's going on with this offseason. We've talked about it before on a couple of the other podcasts. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how much work they're going to get in. They're doing the virtual stuff right now, but that's not being out on the field, actually running through the plays, getting hit and all that stuff. So that might slow Vaughn down some. But the fact that they took him in the 3rd round, Arians wanted him, I think speaks a little bit to them wanting Vaughn, because there's a lot of people who are out there saying the opposite, that, oh, well, they needed another back because they didn't have Peyton Barber anymore. But as you just mentioned, they had I don't know how to say it. It's like
Dare Ogunbowale.
You guys, and you can say it because I'm still not.
Can we just call him Dare?
Let's just call him Dare. Okay, so they have
He's like
Dare.
Madonna. He only needs one name.
He can do the opposite of what Rojo is good at. Rojo's a phenomenal runner. He's not very good receiver. He's just not. So they had Dare, and I don't think they drafted Vaughn to just be a backup. I clearly think if you're taking someone in the 3rd round, giving him that kind of draft capital, they're expecting something from him out of the offense. So is it going to be this year? I don't know. I could see, as Dennis just said earlier, and Ronald Jones kind of having it first and going with it, and then see if Vaughn kind of makes his way in. But I do think Vaughn's the back of the future for them.
Well, you got to think it's almost a little bit like the path you have with David Johnson in Arizona. He was not nobody thought when he first came in that he was going to be what he became, but they tested him out in the offense, and he was able to make the most of his opportunity. That's going to be the question to me for either Jones or Keyshawn Vaughn. They're going to get an opportunity. What do you do with it?
And this is the crazy thing, too, is I want to say I think Vaughn's probably a better runner. I think he's a better overall running back than Ronald Jones. That hurts.
Well, that's all right. Ronald Jones can take over the Peyton Barber role and give us 250 yards on 250 carries this season.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Hey, that'll work for him. And then he's going to break out, but he's not going to be on Tampa.
So Matt, you're the Ronald Jones fan.
Yes.
We're sitting here this time next year. Are the
Yes.
Bucks picking? Wait, Jones wasn't a first round pick, so there's no fifth round option, fifth year option. So never mind.
Yeah, I'll tell you right now, Ronald Jones is going to have a phenomenal year with somebody else in a couple of years, and he's going to break out. And he's going to make me look right. It's just not going to be with Tampa Bay.
He's going to go somewhere and actually be real running backs.
He's going to be the next Justin Forsett after Raheem Mostert's the next Justin Forsett.
That comment on Twitter was the most hurtful thing I saw this weekend, by the way. As somebody who's been stockpiling Raheem Mostert, just putting that Justin Forsett hate on me.
No, Forsett broke out at like 27 years old, and he had like 3 really good years where he was good for fantasy.
Then I took it the wrong way because I thought you were making comments about being overdrafted, because all I remember is I was so excited to get Justin Forsett, and I had Le'Veon Bell and Arian Foster, and within a week they were all dead.
Yeah.
1 year I was just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, Forsett came out of nowhere, had like 2.5 really good years, and then just injuries. I mean, he was kind of like Mostert in that he was a bit underweight, not real big, but he could play. He fit the offense the Ravens had at the time really well, and that's where Mostert is right now. But at 200 pounds, it's like, how long is he going to hold up?
It's our fear about Philip Lindsay, our friend.
Yeah, good friend of the podcast, Philip Lindsay.
Yeah.
Phil, come, bring your baby.
Yeah, exactly. I'd love to have you on, buddy. Big fan. So is that guy right there. So Chris Godwin obviously had a huge breakout year last year. A lot. In fairness, I think everybody in the fantasy community thought he was going to have a big year last year, and he proved everybody right. Mike Evans also had a good year last year, much to my chagrin, as I'm not a big fan of his. With Tom Brady being there, do we think both of them can finish in the top 10 in 2020, knowing they also have the tight ends and the running backs? Do they both finish top 10 for fantasy, Dennis?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm Brady and my choice is 6'6", 250-pound Rob Gronkowski running a 4.8 in a non-tight end friendly offense, and Mike Evans 6'5", 235 pounds running a 4.6 somewhere with much better leaping ability, I'm probably going to throw the ball towards Evans. And Godwin is, if he plays out of the slot like he's being projected, he'll get a fair amount of targets. The challenge I have with that whole concept, though, is Godwin doesn't run out of the slot the way Edelman runs out of the slot. And so to just assume, they'll put him in the slot and Brady loves slot guys, I don't see Chris Godwin as that run 5 yards, dart to the left 3 yards, dart to the right 5 yards, dart up 2 yards to be open. I don't see that from Chris Godwin's game. Godwin's a good route runner, but I don't think that it isn't like Julian Edelman.
Yeah. Well, so here's my question on that too, though, is I'm wondering a big reason why those guys, they weren't even really 2 years ago. I know Godwin, I think, finished as a wide receiver 2, but he wasn't a wide receiver 1. But last year had so much to do with them being so far behind in games, right? And the fact that they threw the ball so many times. Assuming that the defense plays better this year, which they had a really good run defense last year. They made some improvements on the defense. And the fact that they brought in Tom Brady, who's not going to turn the ball over like Jameis, we think. Are they really going to be throwing the ball enough to get both of those guys the fantasy value we think they're going to get? Because I do think that's where a lot of it came from, was the fact that Jameis threw it a million times last year for 30-plus touchdowns, and the 30 interceptions helped them continue to get back on the field.
I mean, I don't know why you'd assume Brady wouldn't throw it a lot. If their defense is better, they may not have to throw quite as much as, Winston obviously had to throw even more. And also, if Brady doesn't turn the ball over, they may not have to. But I'm looking at his pass attempts. Last year, he made 613 pass attempts. The year before, 570. The year before that, 581. I mean,
that was Brady?
Yeah, I'm looking at Brady right now. So he has had, let's see, the year he was suspended for 4 games, he still managed 432. Aside from that, he had 600 plus pass attempts from 2011 to 2015. So, I think the idea that what I said, what we don't usually see in a Brady offense is like that power running game anymore. But a lot of short passing, a lot of short and intermediate passing. I think both those guys could be in the top 10. I think both will end up as wide receiver 1s. I just tend to think Evans might be wide receiver 11 or wide receiver 12.
All right.
I can agree with that.
Cameron Brate, OJ Howard, and Gronk are all the tight ends that are probably going to be fantasy viable on this offense. Which one is it going to be? If you had to choose, which one are you drafting and putting all of your stock behind for the Tampa Bay offense?
If I'm drafting for Dynasty, it's not Gronk.
Okay, well then hit it with both Dynasty and this year.
But I feel like if you're expecting any type of production out of the tight ends this year, that Gronk has to be the guy. I feel like he'll be the one. He'll lose snaps because they're not going to have him out there blocking. That's going to be Brayton Howard. But when it's a clear 12 personnel, they're going to throw the ball. Gronk is going to be out there, and he's the safety blanket.
I have to be honest, if you're drafting any of these tight ends long term for fantasy or for dynasty, I think you're kind of having a problem because we have yet to really see that breakout from OJ Howard. Hard to imagine it's going to come now that he's got Gronk. Cameron Brate is what he is. I think I'm with Dennis. If you're in redraft or if you're just looking to bolster that position for a year, I'm happy taking a flyer on Gronk because we've seen he's the only one receiver that we know coming into this situation has chemistry with Brady. I think some of the questions are just whether he's going to be able to hold up all season or whether he's going to be rusty or how they're going to integrate him with the offense. I think all of us have thought it's possible he's kind of on a snap camp to save him a little bit, which is where you get Howard and Brate kind of going out and playing a little more.
Yeah. All right, let's do some over-unders here. Brady, we'll do it. We'll do it your guys' way now since we've complaining about it every episode. Under being better, over being worse. So, Brady, QB 12 in 2020. Over or under Dennis?
Over meaning 11 or better?
No, 13
or 13 or better.
Yeah, under being 11, since you guys kept complaining about.
Now that you finally changed it, we still won't be able to figure it out. But
yeah.
Well, I think it's difficult to say he's going to have two wide receiver ones and not expect him to be a quarterback one.
Okay.
So I'm going to say he'll finish as a QB one.
So under?
Yeah.
I mean, 12 is technically a QB one, but I got what you're saying. Matt, what about you? Under or over?
That was my way to push it.
I'm really angry because I ranked Brady QB 12 when I just did my rankings. So once again, I'm going to say slight over because I think there's a better chance of him being QB 13 than being QB 10.
All right, his ADP right now is 204, being drafted as QB 26. Just ahead of him, Jordan Love, Cam Newton, and Drew Brees. Would you take him over any of those three?
I would take him over Jordan Love because I think there's a real unclear path for Jordan Love or not knowing how that works out. So in Dynasty, I'd rather have a shot of a couple of years of potentially QB1 production from Tom Brady than sitting with Jordan Love on my bench for a long time. Cam Newton's tricky because he doesn't have a job. I probably would take Brady right now, but if Cam signs somewhere, I don't know. I would not take him over Brees.
I would not take him over Brees, but where would Cam have to sign for you to take him over Brady?
Well, that's a good question. I think if Cam signed with New England, I'd take Cam because in Dynasty you're looking a little bit longer,
right?
I think with his ability to create, and with a good coaching staff, I think he'd be good, but. If Cam went to Jacksonville, I might seriously think about that as well. I think we all like some of Jacksonville's pieces. We like Shark, we like Fournette, Laviska Shenault could be interesting. Westbrook exists, Tyler Eifert exists. So Jay Gruden's another guy who's done well building some offenses. Wasn't maybe perhaps the world's greatest head coach, but then So those are places that Cam would be interesting if he went somewhere where, if he signs with the Chargers, no way am I taking him over him because I think they made a commitment to Justin Herbert, and no matter what you really see from Cam, it's hard to imagine a real long-term stable success. So I think that's where it gets interesting. Cam's younger, potentially has, more of a potential career. And we've seen him do some really explosive things to where he's been a better fantasy quarterback than Brady, maybe not a better real life quarterback.
Good.
So, would you take him over Newton and Love, Dennis?
I would take him over Newton and Love. Yes.
I would take him over Love. I might take Newton just because I think there's so many places he could go. Like Matt, you were just reading off some of the teams. Like, if he goes to Oakland, I could easily see him beating out Derek Carr, winning that job, and John Gruden doing great things with him. If he possibly ends up going to New Orleans and he's going to be the future behind Drew Brees instead of Jameis Winston. I'm trying to look at some other teams. There was a lot of talk earlier that great place might be for him to go to like the Los Angeles Rams and back up Jared Goff or something like that and see if Goff might get hurt. It was San Francisco we talked about earlier in the offseason because they can get out of Jimmy G's contract in a year. Like, there's a lot of places I think Newton can land, and I think regardless of if he were to land on a team this year and be a backup, I just think he's got a better future in the NFL than Tom Brady. Now, if we're talking about my one quarterback, like if I have to have my quarterback for this year, I'm probably going Brady. But if this is my second or third quarterback, which is where Brady's going in drafts, I'm going to take Newton because I think he's got a better chance for upside. So I would take Newton there. So I'd take him over Love, but not Newton and Brady. So just after Brady, Teddy Bridgewater, Jalen Hurts, and Jared Stidham. I wouldn't.
If you take Stidham over Brady, you are a Patriots fan.
No, Bridgewater would be a coin flip for me because I really like Matt Rule and Joe Brady being there, as we're about to talk about the Carolina Panthers. I think Bridgewater could be really good for fantasy with that offense and the weapons he has around him. So I think Bridgewater would be the better long play, but it would be a coin flip regardless for me on those two. I would easily take him over Hurts instead of no ifs, ands, or buts about it. What about you, Matt?
I mean, Bridgewater to me is the second best quarterback on his own team, so I'm not taking any of those over Brady.
Wait, who else is on the Panthers? Oh, PJ Walker, right? Is that who you're talking about? Oh, okay. What about you, Dennis?
I am
XFL forever.
Definitely not taking him over Hurts.
We probably wouldn't take ourselves over Hurts at this point. Dennis got so choked up he froze. Yeah.
He froze again.
God damn it.
No, well, there you are. Came through on that one.
We got the important parts.
Right.
So he's freezing and then the cuss words come out and he unfreezes again. He might be doing this on purpose. All right, let's move on to the running backs. Ronald Jones, RB20 in 2020. Over or under, Dennis? And he froze again. And he's frozen again. Matt, over or under, RB20?
I'm taking him over.
Over?
Because over's bad, right? Over's bad again?
Yes, over is bad. I will agree. I think he's going to be over because as much as I love Ronald Jones, I'm going to be all in on Keyshawn Vaughn.
Yeah.
Dennis
Jones could finish as RB25 and have a really good season, but still be worse than that prediction. Yeah, you're there, buddy.
Sort of.
I think he's gonna finish. I'm gonna take the under.
Every time he's about to say over, he's just not being forced to commit to any of these Buccaneer players. So later he can tell us he picked anything he wanted.
He doesn't want to commit to over under now, so he's going in and out. All right, let's see here. ADP of 111. He's being drafted as RB38, so going just ahead of him. Kerryon Johnson, A.J. Dillon, and Alexander Madison. Would you take him over any of those three, Dennis? No, I'm guessing.
Over Kerryon, just slightly. I'll take him over Dillon, but I think I'd probably take him over Madison too, unless I had.
Yeah, I would take him over Dillon and Madison, who I think, have real unclear, or in the case of Madison, seems like he's on a kind of backup trajectory because Johns at least has a shot to start. It's kind of a young back. But I still wouldn't take him over Kerryon Johnson. I think Kerryon Johnson can be productive in Detroit this year and could be productive if he goes somewhere else.
Yeah, see, that's the hard one for me because I kind of think him and Carryon are in the same role. Because I love DeAndre Swift, and as I just said, I love Keyshawn Vaughn. So I would kind of take Ronald Jones just because I think I can see more of a path to playing time for him over. I think DeAndre Swift is so good. I really think he's going to be able to almost kind of make Carryon a non-factor there for Detroit. So I would still take Rojo over all three of those. Just behind Ronald Jones, we've got Marlon Mack, Tariq Cohen, and Darrell Henderson. Matt, would you take Rojo over? I'm sorry, would you take any of those three over Ronald Jones?
I would take Cohen. I think we've talked about. I like the potential of his production in his potential role. The one that's probably the biggest question for me. I still like the potential of Henderson. So. That one would be kind of a toss-up for me. I'm just not that high on Jones. I don't know if it's a good fit for him in Tampa Bay, and so, I think he could be good. But I think there's plenty of debate. The questions that we're having about Ronald Jones and Keyshawn Vaughn, you could apply to Akers and Henderson a little bit too. Henderson has some potential, so it just probably depends on my team and on my mood on that day whether I'd take him over. That one's close to me. I wouldn't go for Mac over him because I think Mac's trending the other way.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I probably wouldn't take any of the three over him. I do think Montgomery takes a little bit of a step forward, so I'm not as big on Cohen, though he likely will still get a lot of the receiving work. The one thing I'll say on Henderson, I've really kind of soured on him just because he really didn't show much at all last year in his rookie year. And the fact that the Rams took Akers with their first pick in the entire NFL draft, I think speaks volumes of what they expect from him. So I don't think it's going to be quite the timeshare others do. So I think Rojo, again, same thing as I said about the guys before. I think he's got a more clear path to playing time over Matt Cohen and Henderson, so I would take him over all three. Dennis, would you take Matt Cohen or Henderson over Rojo?
No, I'd take Rojo. It'd be closer with Cohen and Henderson. I still think Cohen is going to get he's going to push for 100 targets. And I think Henderson is going to get a fair share of work as well, especially with the abbreviated offseason. At the beginning of the year, I could see it being 60-40 split in Henderson's favor, but the second half of the year, if Akers steps up, being 60-40 in Akers' favor.
Just wait until we're here this time next year talking about the 1,400-yard breakout season for Malcolm Brown.
Right.
All right, Keyshawn Vaughn. I'm actually going to keep it at the same. RB20, over or under for 2020?
Over for me.
Under. I think Jones is going to be the better of the two backs this year.
No, under means you think he's a top 20 back.
Whatever. I think I'm going to start using the numbers.
He's got an ADP of I actually disagree with both of you. I think he's going to be under. I think Vaughn's going to have a really good year this year. ADP of 67. He is being drafted as the 24th RB off the board, just ahead of him Melvin Gordon, David Montgomery, and Devin Singletary. I would not take him over any of those three, even though I love Vaughn. Take that back. I would take him over Gordon because I believe Lindsey is going to eat more into Gordon than other people do. I got to stick with it. I'm on that train. I'm going to crash with it, so I'm going to stick with that. Wouldn't take him over Montgomery or Singletary, though. Matt, what about you?
Same.
Dennis?
I would not take him over any of them. I think Gordon and Lindsey are going to have a fairly even split on the carry, so Lindsey is going to get his rushing production. But I think Gordon's the better receiver. I think the receiving back to own in Denver is Melvin Gordon.
I don't necessarily disagree with you on that. I think Lindsey's a better receiver than they think, but they haven't really given him that much of a chance.
Better than they think, and not as good as Melvin Gordon. Gordon is.
I mean, Lindsey had a much better or much more productive college game receiving. They haven't. Where I will agree with you is he hasn't shown it in the NFL because Denver hasn't given him that shot. Where we did see the Chargers gave Melvin Gordon that shot, and Gordon proved that he could do it. So I would.
I think you guys are both forgetting that when Lindsey started to break out for Denver in his first season, he was the third down receiving back.
Oh,
that was how he scored his first touchdowns. That was how he got on the field. It was just the fact that he could actually run and had a pulse, unlike Royce Freeman, that got him more of the rushing work.
Oh, I agree. He just hasn't proved what Melvin Gordon's proved, is what I'm trying to say. The Chargers have gone up until this past year, where Eckler had obviously the huge breakout year. As much as I dislike I don't dislike him as much as you do, but as much as I dislike Melvin Gordon as well, he's proved that he can be a capable receiving back. Just behind Keyshawn Vaughn, Le'Veon Bell, Kareem Hunt, and Chris Carson. This is an interesting one for me. Dennis, would you take any of those three over Keyshawn Vaughn?
Yes. I'd take Bell and Carson probably. Hunt, I think, could be – it would depend on my mood. But I think Hunt is going to get enough passing work to make him viable as a, high RB3. So, which is – if I think Rojo's going to be a low RB2, I think Vaughn will be a high RB3. So it comes down to being a coin flip there. So definitely over Bell and Carson, coin flip with Hunt.
Okay. Matt?
I think for me, if you're in a dynasty draft and you need production in 2020, I would probably look at Bell, Carson, or Hunt as potentially being better bet. If you're in redraft, I would probably look at all three of those guys. But if you're just looking dynasty and potential, I probably... I think Carson's health and running back situation seems to always be a little bit in flux, and we all think that there's a very good chance that Le'Veon Bell is not with the Jets next year, and you don't know where he ends up.
Yeah.
Hunt could go to a better situation. He could, I guess, potentially go to a worse situation. So those are three guys that I think might outproduce Vaughn this year on the field, but are in maybe less desirable long-term situations.
Yeah, so since we are talking about it as a dynasty thing, I would not take any of them. Carson's injury history the past couple of years has scared me off of him. And I agree with what you were just saying, Matt. Like, I don't know what's going to happen with Bell or Hunt moving forward. I believe Keyshawn Vaughn is the back of the future for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I just said I thought he's going to have an RB2 season this year. And I think that's where all three of those guys land. I still think Hunt could have a good year. Carson, Bell, probably both RB2s for this year. If I take Bell, I might lose out a little bit on the points this year with Rojo eating in, but I think moving forward, he's going to be the back for them. And so I think you're getting the long-term success of Vaughn. I would rather take that over those other three guys. Chris Godwin, wide receiver 5 in 2020, over or under, Matt?
I'm going to say under.
All right.
I think 5 is a great number. I think he's probably going to be in the 6 to 8 range.
Okay. I am going to go under as well with Matt on this one. I agree with what Dennis said earlier. He's not quite Julian Edelman, but I do think he's going to be extremely dangerous out of the slot. I think Brady is going to feed him like crazy, and it's going to cause him to – I don't think he puts up that wide receiver 2 numbers that he put up this last year. Right? I mean, he was technically with the pack. Michael Thomas completely separated himself last year from everybody. But I think he's got a better shot of finishing within that 3 to 5 range or 2 to 5 range than behind it. So I'm going to go under. He's got an ADP of 12 right now. He's actually the 5th wide receiver off the board. Just ahead of him, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, and Hopkins. Would you take him over any of those three, Dennis?
I can see the argument for taking him over those three. I think with the unstable quarterback situation for Godwin versus Hopkins, I'd probably stick with Hopkins, even though I think Godwin may outscore him this year. Hill has a super stable quarterback situation, even if he's not as stable himself. Hill is well, I guess Godwin was a little boom busty last year as well. So I'd probably take Godwin over Hill, but I think I'd take Adams. I still think Rodgers is going to be there for another 3 years. So I think that gives me the impetus to take Adams over Godwin.
I would take him over Hill, but probably not the other two.
Yeah, I agree with Matt. I think it's for me. I think he's just a little bit more consistent than Hill is. Like Hill is going to more often give you those like 30 to 40-point games because he's going to catch you those 3 balls for like 100-something yards and a couple touchdowns. Where Godwin, I think, especially with Brady being there this year and not having Jameis, is going to be a little bit more consistent. I don't think he's going to be quite boom as bust as he was last year with Hill. So I would take him, but I would not take him over Adams or Hopkins. Just behind him, DJ Moore, Juju Smith-Schuster, and his teammate, Mike Evans. I would take him easily over all 3 of those. Moore would be close for me, but I would easily take him over Juju and Evans. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, I wouldn't take him. I would take him over all 3 of those.
All right.
As would I.
All right. Mike Evans, wide receiver 9 in 2020, over or under Dennis?
I'm going to say is 10 to 12 over?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm taking the over.
I'm also taking the over. I think he's in that 10 to 12 range.
Yeah, I agree. He's got an ADP of 22. He's being drafted as wide receiver 8. Just ahead of him, Juju, DJ Moore, and Chris Godwin. Would you take him over any of those 3? I would not. Matt, would you?
Would I take him over? I would probably take him over Moore.
Okay. Dennis?
I would probably take him over Juju.
Interesting. Okay. Right behind him, A.J. Brown, Odell Beckham Jr., and Amari Cooper. I'm still taking OBJ over him. I have to. I think he's going to be huge this year, but I would not take Brown or Cooper over him at all. Dennis, what about you?
I think I'd take Godwin over all 3 of them.
No, Evans.
Evans, I mean. Okay. Evans. So see what happens when I don't cross him off the list.
Don't do it. Ride or die. Ride or die with me, buddy. You got to take Odell.
I would probably take Amari Cooper over him.
Oh, God. How do I get you off the stream again? Where'd that button go?
I don't really care for Mike Evans personally, and I can't. Amari Cooper is going to be the guy that I have in that meme where I say I don't know how to quit you.
All right, last 2 for the Bucs before we move on to the Panthers. 2 tight ends. O.J. Howard, tight end 20 in 2020, over or under?
Way over.
Yeah, over.
I agree.
You could put that at tight end 30, and I would probably still go over.
His ADP is of 151. He's being drafted as the 18th tight end on the board. So right before him, Jonnu Smith, Hayden Hurst, and Irv Smith. I wouldn't take him over any of those. I assume you both agree with that.
Do you think that's being heavily influenced by the fact that a lot of people thought we were in for like a O.J. Howard renaissance before the late resumption of?
No, because the way that DLF updates their thing is they take like the last 5 to 10 drafts that just happened. So it's very recent drafts. It changes all the time. So yeah, I don't think so.
Does anybody else find that kind of shocking that he's still going that high?
I think it's because people I've seen out there talking about everything. I think that they think he's going to be the next Gronk, and that's why they picked up the 5th-year option. They feel Gronk's going to be there for a year. Now that Brady's there, he's always had a propensity to throw to the tight end. They think that he's going to break out. I've never been a fan of Howard. I feel like the way he's played is exactly what I thought he was going to do this entire time. So I'm not surprised with him not breaking out at all.
Well, I mean, Brady has, I guess, in the past sustained 2 elite tight ends with Gronk and the tight end who shall not be named. But it's hard to see that really.
Right? Baron Bernandez, something like that.
There you go. I was trying to keep it upbeat. But, it's hard to imagine that.
It's 2020, Matt. No reason to be upbeat.
Yeah, I know. If only they could read our private chat.
Yeah. All right. So right after him, Ian Thomas, Cole Kmet, and Blake Jarwin. I would take Kmet and Thomas over Howard, not Jarwin. What about you guys?
Probably the same
Who else
for me.
does Dallas have?
A lot of really good wide receivers.
CeeDee Lamb. That's all you need to know. Amari Cooper, Matt's man
Unfortunately,
crush.
Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup. They've got 2 really good wide receivers.
Ezekiel Elliott.
If you believe that Howard is not the guy, not a guy like Matt Bruning does, then why would you give Jarwin a chance?
because I don't think Jarwin has any shot to do anything after. He's going to be like the fifth option. It's going to be CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, Zeke Elliott, Dak Prescott, Amari Cooper, then Blake Jarwin. And that's just because Amari Cooper sucks. So, I mean, Blake Jarwin's the sixth. Like, Dak's going to call his own number first. I guess I could see it, but I think
Tony Pollard's going to come in and play tight end first.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm not a believer in Jarwin either. So, all right, Gronk. He's Gronk, tight end 15 in 2020, over or under?
I'm going to go slightly over. I mean, under.
I think he's going to be. See, over is the high number, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Over
is bad, under's good.
I think he's going to be over, in part because I do think that between Gronk and Howard and Brate, there's going to be some cannibalization, and it's going to cause all of them to drop down. So I think Gronk will be maybe a mid tight end 2, low tight end 2, and then the other two will be back end tight end 3s or 4s with some spike games. So I think Gronk's consistency will struggle because of the other guys as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that he'll be consistent, but think about the state of tight end. If Gronk gets 6 touchdowns, which doesn't seem unreasonable, and 400 yards, he could easily be in a tight end 1 for fantasy just because of how rough the position is. That's where I'm like, I could see him in the tight end 12 to 14 range, which is slightly over, even if he isn't a huge factor that we've come to see before.
Slightly under. We should have just stuck with it.
After you finally got us conditioned, it's like Pavlov's dog. You just took our food away at the bell.
Pay attention. I'm going to go over as well, not just because I think they're going to cannibalize each other. I think they're going to lean heavily on Godwin and Evans, and I think when they get down in the red zone, we're going to see a lot of that stuff getting dumped off to Vaughn or Dare, like Brady liked to do with the Patriots. I think Bruce Arians has already talked about he wants to kind of complement his game plan with what Brady likes to do. I think they're going to move away from Gronk, and I don't think he's going to be – I think he's going to be used more toward the back end of the year in playoffs and in the beginning part of the year, and I think that's where it's really going to hurt his fantasy value. Being drafted just ahead of him, Mike Gesicki, Tyler Higbee, and Dallas Goedert. Would you take him in front of any of those three?
No, not for me.
Nope.
I agree. Right behind him, hang on one second. There's a comment about Keyshawn Vaughn. I'll get to that in a second. Right after him, Irv Smith, Hayden Hurst, or Jonnu Smith. Would you take any of them over Gronk?
Yep, all of them.
So would I.
Yeah, probably in Dynasty. To me, Gronk is a 1-year swing that you're grabbing as late as you can for some production.
Not selling Vaughn at all, buddy. Sorry. I'm not getting rid of him. All right, on to the Carolina Panthers. They finished 5-11 last year, missed the playoffs, changed up their whole coaching staff. Do you guys think with Matt Rule, who, as we've talked about before, again, I know college and NFL is completely different, but everywhere he's gone, he's been able to rebuild the team that he's been with, and bringing in an offensive coordinator like Joe Brady. We saw what they were able to do at LSU last year as part of the Saints offense the past couple years before that. Do you think that they're able to turn around the Panthers and make the playoffs in the next 3 years, Matt?
I mean, I think it's possible, but that's a lot of pressure to put on somebody we haven't seen coach in the NFL that maybe
that's what makes it fun. It's just a podcast. I mean,
it's possible, but if I was betting, I would not bet on it.
Okay.
Chip Kelly said there's no difference between the NFL and college.
And look at where Chip Kelly is now, drinking in UCLA.
I definitely think they'll make the playoffs in the next 3 years.
I agree.
I don't know if Teddy will be their quarterback then.
He definitely will not.
He brings a certain play style. It's going to be good he's a safe player. And we've seen lots of safe quarterbacks take teams deep into the playoffs. We've seen the Ravens with a great defense and a safe Trent Dilfer, the Buccaneers with a great defense and a safe Rob Johnson win the Super Bowl. So to say that they won't, that they can't do it with Teddy, I think it will come down to, do they build their defense and can they make timely plays? So I'm going to say yes, they'll make the playoffs within 3 years.
I agree. I think they're going to make it in that third year. After Brady leaves and Breeze is retired, I think that they are set up the best right now with the weapons they have. I semi-disagree on Teddy Bridgewater. I'm going to make a kind of weird comparison here that a lot of people might not agree with. I think Teddy Bridgewater is very, very close to Joe Burrow, and that is why I think Joe Brady wanted them to go out and get him. He is a very smart quarterback. He's a very good football IQ. He does not have the biggest arm, but he knows when to throw the ball in there. He does a lot of anticipation throws. I think he's going to fit perfectly into Joe Brady's offense, which, again, is why they went out to get him. I think the reason they signed him to the 3-year deal speaks to some of the reservations they have on him that Dennis just mentioned, but I think he's actually going to perform pretty well in this offense. Some of the offseason moves that they've made here, they brought in Robbie Anderson, who played with Matt Rule at Temple. Traded for Russell Okung. They obviously signed Teddy Bridgewater, extended Christian McCaffrey. They brought in undrafted free agent Omar Bayless, who was a guy that a lot of the Devy crowd were very high on from what he did last year. And they brought in quarterback P.J. Walker from the XFL. They cut Cam Newton, traded Kyle Allen, and then probably one of their better offensive pieces, Curtis Samuel, will be an unrestricted free agent after this season. Fantasy finishes. Teddy Bridgewater finished QB 33 with 92.2 points in 6 games last year, averaged 11.52. Would have finished as QB 24 had that played out. CMC RB1 with 392.9 points. He was 116.9 points higher than the RB2, which was Aaron Jones. DJ Moore took a huge step forward last year, finished as wide receiver 13 with 187 points. Curtis Samuel, wide receiver 33 with 142.4 points. And then Greg Olsen finishes tied in 13 with 95.6 points. So what do we expect from Teddy Bridgewater in 2020 under Matt Rule and Joe Brady in who run a pass-friendly offense, Dennis?
I think they're going to put Teddy in the position to make the throws that Teddy makes well. With Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, and Curtis Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, and Ian Thomas, whatever Teddy does well against a particular defense, they're going to be able to do it in the passing game. So it could lead to some, he could have some games where his yards per attempt is low, somewhere it's high. But if the defense can't get pressure on the quarterback and the defensive backs can't cover because they're having to cover too long, then I think you're going to see Curtis Samuel, Robbie Anderson type of games. If the defense is, beating that offensive line like a redheaded stepchild, then you're going to see a lot of Ian Thomas, Christian McCaffrey. DJ Moore is going to be the intermediate guy. So I expect that he's going to have a pretty good year. He's a safe player. He's not going to take a ton of risks. And I think that Brady and Rule will put him in positions to make plays.
Matt?
I am not a Teddy Bridgewater believer. I thought, he was okay as a fill-in. But, if you look at his last full year as a starter when he was in Minnesota, he threw for 3,200 yards, 14 TDs, and 9 INTs. That was in a full 16-game season where he had a really good running back behind him. That, to me, I think he's a low-end quarterback too.
Well, but that really good running back he had also couldn't catch the ball. Not like Christian McCaffrey.
I know. I just don't. I think that is about where Teddy Bridgewater is as a passer. I don't think undergoing an almost career-ending knee injury suddenly made him Joe Montana.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I'll say on Teddy with the Minnesota is I really think he's going to have a completely different offense here in Carolina with Joe Brady, and he has a lot of the weapons around him that Joe Burrow had in LSU. He's got 2 really good wide receivers. I mean, I think Curtis Samuel's getting undersold a little bit. And then obviously, in my opinion, has a much better back than CEH and Christian McCaffrey. And we saw what that offense was able to do with him And I think, like I said, I think Teddy is very close to Joe Burrow. So I think he's actually going to have a really good year this year. Again, a lot of that's going to be on what they can all get worked out throughout this offseason and how much of that offense he can get onto. Will CMC be the RB1 again in 2020?
I'm going to say no, but only because it so rarely happens that a running back repeats.
Yeah, that's my feeling is I think he's definitely going to be right up there near the top, but it's so hard to do it again. And, you talked about they have some potentially better pieces and a better scheme. I think a lot of what propelled him to be so high and to be so far and away of the RB1 is there were some big injuries and inefficiency among some of his competitors, and Carolina literally had nothing else, it seemed like at times.
Yeah. Moore just missed out on being a wide receiver 1. With him being more established, do we see a step up from Curtis Samuel in 2020?
I think Samuel, it's going to come down to opportunities. And I don't know that he's going to, if he gets the same amount of opportunities he had last year, he'll have a much better year because I think he'll convert more of them due to Teddy just being a better quarterback than Kyle Allen. I think Teddy's more accurate, and I think that will help Samuel. So I say step up, yes. Breakout, not. I don't know I'd go that far.
Yeah, I think when they went and got Robbie Anderson, that was sort of a bad sign for Curtis Samuel. I actually think he'll finish behind where he was last year.
All right. Thomas has looked good when he's been filling in for Greg Olsen. So do we expect a breakout year for Ian Thomas at the tight end position in 2020, Dennis?
Yeah, I like Thomas. I think he's the tight end to own there. A lot of people are on him as a sleeper tight end this year. And I feel fortunate. I've got him in a couple leagues already. Picked him up as a rookie and been just holding on to him. So I like Thomas. I think he's going to do better than Gronkowski.
I mean, if our standard we're setting is that he's the tight end to own in Carolina and that makes him a breakout, I'm going to go yes there because I could not pick another tight end in Carolina out in a lineup.
You don't know who Chris Hurts is?
But I think he's a low-end tight end too.
All right. I'm with Dennis on this one. I think Thomas has looked really good. We saw Olsen, who was banged up most of last year, still finishes tight end 13. I think, granted, it's a little bit of a different offense as I've been talking about here, so I don't know how much the tight end position will be incorporated in the offense, but Teddy looked to Jared Cook more often than Drew Brees did when he was in there. If he looks toward Ian Thomas, I could still see him, as Matt mentioned earlier when we were talking about Gronk, and them tight end positions really bad outside of those top guys. So it's not hard to finish as a really good tight end and have a breakout year. Over or under, Teddy, QB 17 in 2020, Matt?
Over.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with over. I think he'll be top 20-ish. It wouldn't surprise me if he finished at 15 or so. But being forced to choose, I'm going over.
Well, that's a good call by you because I'm going under, and I think he's going to finish his QB 15. That was where I was going. So I'm really buying all in on Teddy in this offense. I think it's going to be much better than a lot of people are giving him credit for. ADP of 205, he's being drafted as QB 27. Just ahead of him, Tom Brady, Jordan Love, and Cam Newton. Would you take him over any of those three?
Definitely over Love. And I'd take him over Newton because he's got a goddamn job.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
Yeah. I was expecting a freeze and then the cursing come out. All right. Yeah, I agree with you on that. I'm taking him over Love and Newton. Right behind him, Hurts, Stidham, and Minshew. Are you taking any of those three over Teddy Bridgewater? I would take none of them because I believe Bridgewater is going to be better than Minshew. Minshew would be the only one that's close for me, though. Dennis?
They are close. They kind of I see them as back-to-back guys, and so I don't have 42 teams like you. I'm only at 15 or so.
Which seems impossible because you've ticked off that you're in like 95 rookie drafts. So I don't know. Do you do like 30 rookie drafts per team? Something's not stacking up here.
No, I haven't. I haven't done 95 rookie drafts. I have done a fair amount of rookie drafts, but I think I've only done 8 or 9, maybe 10 rookie drafts, something like that. I've still got a couple to go. Got a live rookie draft coming up here in July.
Live drafts.
Anyways,
no.
Minshew. I could go either way. It's a coin flip for Minshew and Teddy. I'm not taking Hurts or Stidham over him.
Look, give me the chest hair. Give me the headband. Give me the Mo freaking Jaguar King.
Don't forget the jorts, man. Don't forget the jorts. The jorts are the best part about it.
No one's ever forgetting the jorts.
All right, CMC RB2 in 2020, over or under? Making you commit.
I'm going to say over because I think we talked about not thinking he's going to be number 1, and since you've just really handcuffed our options by putting these two.
Boy.
Yeah, I think that I'm gonna go over. I think he'll be outside the top 2.
I agree. I'm only going over because I don't think he has as many huge plays as he had last year. It seemed like every week we were watching him get like a 50-yard either pass catch for a touchdown, a receiving touchdown, or rushing for a 50-yard touchdown. I don't think he gets quite that this year. And I think Barkley, Zeke take a step forward as well, Barkley being injured all of last year. He's obviously being drafted as the number 1 player off the board and the first RB. Just behind him, Barkley, Zeke, Kamara, and Cook. So would you take any of them over him for dynasty purposes, Matt?
No, I mean, I think he's earned the right to be that number 1 pick, and getting a long-term extension, which several of those guys don't have, I think kind of solidifies that position because he's going to be there, and that they've decided he's going to be their guy.
Zeke has the long-term extension.
Yeah, it's true.
He was not a consideration for me as number 1.
I might take Barkley over him, but again, it comes down to my mood at the time because they are so close for me. While Barkley hasn't produced at CMC's level, I do think that he's shown the capability to do so. And I'm not really. I'm in sell Zeke mode now. I think Zeke is at peak value, and if you can sell him, you should.
We're simpatico on that again, Dennis. I would take Barkley. I've been all in on Barkley for a couple of years now. I think last year being hurt really obviously set him back. But seeing what Daniel Jones can do, I'm really thinking Barkley's going to have a huge breakout year this year. I still think he's the main cog in that New York Giants offense. So I would take Barkley moving forward. This may be kind of controversial to say, but I think Barkley's just the overall better running back than CMC. And so I would take him because I think he's got a much longer future than CMC does. DJ Moore, wide receiver 12, over or under? I will go first. I will take under. He finished as wide receiver 13 last year. I think he's going to be the Jamar Chase of this offense. I think he's going to have a huge year for the Carolina Panthers, Joe Brady, and Teddy Bridgewater. So I will go under on 12. Matt, what about you?
I'm going to go slightly under as well.
I'm going to take the under. Why not?
All right. I like it. He's being drafted. This is actually the very surprising thing to me here. So ADP of 15, he's being drafted as the 6th wide receiver off the board. So just ahead of him, Chris Godwin, Tyreek Hill, and Devontae Adams. Would you take him over any of those 3, Dennis?
No.
Matt?
No.
I agree. Hill would be tough for me because I think he's so boom bust, but he's so.
I would also never draft Hill, so that's.
Yeah, I know. I was going to put that caveat in there for you, but I think Hill's big games though are going to be so much more than what DJ Moore can bring you. So I would still take Hill over him.
And he's in a better offense.
Yeah.
Even if you think Carolina's going to take a step forward,
you're
already there.
Patrick Mahomes. That's not happening. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Right behind him, Juju, Evans, and A.J. Brown. I already said earlier I'd take him over Evans. So for me, I don't think I'd take him over Juju. I definitely wouldn't take him over Brown. I think Juju would probably be the only one that'd be a coin flip, but I'd still take more. I think he's still going to, as I said earlier, have a really good year. So what about you, Matt?
I would take Juju, but that's not a logical choice. That's just
your heart.
The heart wants what the heart wants.
That's why you should take more, because me and Matt have showed you on this podcast, you don't draft with your heart. It makes you lose. Dennis, go ahead.
I think that the fact that Julio Jones is not included in here anywhere is a travesty.
Well,
Julio must be going ahead of him, right?
Oh, he's going behind him. Remember, we talked about it on last episode. I'll pull it up because it's on the same sheet here. Where is Julio going? So Julio's ADP is of 31. He's being drafted as the 13th wide receiver off the board.
More because of his age, I guess.
Shame.
That's what we talked about on there. That's what I would put Julio on here because I feel like he deserves to be in the discussion, but he's not based on the ADPs in the drafts. That's the crazy thing about it. That's why I said Moore's. I'll never own DJ Moore because I don't see myself taking him as a 6th wide receiver off the board. There's just too many other wide receivers and running backs in that range I'd rather have. That's the crazy thing about it. He's really shot up after the year that he had. So would you take any of those 3 over him, Dennis?
I wouldn't take Brown over him. Well, Brown is good, and he was at the top of the list for me last year. I don't think that the Tennessee offense has the production level to boost Brown past Moore. I could see taking Evans, but I'd probably go Moore over Evans. Juju, man, I want to believe that he's going to bounce back with Ben, but I just don't know sometimes. And so I'd probably take Moore over Juju as well.
All right. Curtis Samuel, wide receiver 28 in 2020, over under. I will go slight under. I think he's going to finish closer to a back end wide receiver 2.
I'll go Matt, way over.
How dare you, sir?
Closer to wide receiver 50.
I don't think he's going to be that low, but I see a reasonable – I can see a reasonable case made for Samuel as a low-end wide receiver 2 and a low-end wide receiver 3, high-end 4. So at 28 –
middle tier 3.
Kind of top near the top, about the top third of tier 3. I'm going to take the over. I think he probably finishes closer to 30 to 34, or maybe that's under. I don't know, whichever one it is.
It's over.
You got it. This episode, it's over. We don't know what it's going to be next Monday.
It's going to be mixed up next Monday. You got to tune in to find out what we're doing next Monday.
He just wants to make sure we're actually reading and listening.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so ADP of 132, he's being drafted as a 60th wide receiver off the board. Right before him, Paris Campbell, Miller. Why do I know?
Anthony. It's got to be Anthony Miller.
There we go. And Sammy Watkins. I would take him over Miller and Watkins. Campbell would be a coin flip for me. So I think Campbell's going to have a huge year this year for the Colts. But since I guess I'm behind all in on the Panthers, I got to take him over Campbell. But there's 2 Buckeyes. They're both going to be amazing. So it's whatever. I don't know. I don't care. I'll take both of them. Matt, what about you? Who are you taking? Are you taking him over any of those 3?
I mean, I feel like I want to believe in Anthony Miller, but now I remember that we had a long conversation about Mitchell Trubisky still fundamentally existing in Chicago. Yeah. So I'm going to say at the moment, I couldn't take any of those over him.
You know, I'm pretty close with Campbell, and I like Miller. Miller has popped. He's shown. He's had some games where he's shown, but I don't believe in Trubisky, and I don't think I believe in Foles either. So I don't think I think Allen Robinson will be the guy to own in Chicago. Miller will have a couple games where he puts up decent numbers. Man, Sammy.
Yeah, it's not even a question for me.
Yeah, but I think I might take Campbell because I'm warming up to. With T.Y. Hilton, Paris Campbell, and
Michael Pittman.
Michael Pittman. I feel like the opportunity is going to be there for Campbell to pick up some of the Austin Eckler type work from Nyheim Hines. So I like Campbell over him, I think, by a hair.
All right. Right behind him, Corey Davis, Marvin Jones, and John Brown. Would you take any of those three over him, Dennis?
I'd take Marvin over him. I for some reason I just don't buy into John Brown, and I can't get there with Corey Davis.
Oh yeah, I'm right there. Corey wasn't even an option for me.
Hey,
but Matt,
when is this going to be the 5th-year breakout for Corey Davis?
Yeah, it could happen.
Devontae Parker.
That's right.
Yeah, sure, yeah. I guess AJ Brown go blow his ACL out the first game, and
I think Marvin Jones will have a better 2020 than Curtis Samuel, but if we're looking long term, that's not a bet I'm making. So I don't think I would take any of those three over him.
I would probably take Marvin Jones and John Brown at this point. I feel like you're probably drafting with where they're going on the ADP. You're probably looking at drafting your third or fourth wide receiver at this point. I think Marvin Jones and John Brown both have better upside to a wide receiver to return at least in 2020. I'm not worried about trying to get wide receivers if I need to later, younger guys that I think it could pop later. As much as I love Samuel, I'd much rather have the production now from some wide receivers. So I would take Marvin Jones and John Brown. And I think John Brown, the fact that he's going this late is a travesty. I know they got Stephon Diggs, but he's proven to be a at worst wide receiver 2 every single year. So I'm all in on John Brown. Ian Thomas, tight end 12 in 2020. Dennis, over or under?
I'm going to say over. I think he'll be, 13, 14-ish. He could also be 7. After 5 or 6, tight end is just a hot mess. You don't know, but I'm going to say he'll finish out just a hair over.
Matt?
Over for me.
I will go under. I think he's going to finish as tight end 12. ADP of 153, tight end 19. Just ahead of him, O.J. Howard, Jonnu Smith. Who the hell is Hurts? And why did I put Hurts on here? I don't know who that's supposed to be.
You just wanted to take shots at Jalen Hurts again.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. I think it was supposed to be Hunter Henry, if I'm remembering correctly now, but I don't remember who that's supposed to be. So Howard or Jonnu Smith, are you taking him over either one of those two?
I think I'm taking him over Howard.
I think I'd take him over both.
I would take him over both. I love Jonnu Smith, but that, as we mentioned, that offense, I think Carolina's offense is going to be better than Tennessee's. So just behind him, it's supposed to be Gronk. That's who it is, because we just mentioned Gronk earlier with the it's
Gronk Hurts.
How did it go from Gronk to Hurts?
I don't know. Autocorrect. My phone sucks. I don't know. Anyways, I'm still taking him over Gronk anyway, so it doesn't matter. Right behind him,
Gronk over him.
All right, Dennis. What about you? Gronk, Thomas?
I'm taking Thomas.
Right after him, Cole Kmet, Blake Jarwin, and Jared Cook. Are you taking any of them over Thomas, Matt?
Well, Dennis made a great case for Blake Jarwin, but still no.
No. Dennis?
Nope.
I agree. All right, so that finishes up for the NFC South. We will be moving on to – you guys want to do the East or the West next Monday?
North, South, East.
East?
Yeah.
All right,
Don't you remember? You're a lot closer to elementary school than I am.
That means we get to spend at least 45 minutes discussing Matt's favorite team, the Dallas Cowboys.
You will be very surprised how limited we will talk about the Dallas Cowboys. We will talk a lot about CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, and Zeke Elliott. Not much about anybody else on that team. All right, so we'll be back with the NFC East on Monday. We've got a special guest, Mr. Kenneth Dixon, joining us on Thursday, so that should be a fun episode. Did I say it wrong, Dennis?
No, the way the lack of punctuation in your sentence, my head heard on Monday. We'll have Kenneth Dixon, but no, you're good.
From the band, say his band. Dennis,
Framing Hanley, Kenneth Dixon, Framing Hanley. You can follow Kenneth at FH Hanley, Hanley on Twitter.
I actually got the album today. I plan on listening to it this week, since it's about Fallout Boy, whoever that is, the Tommen, right? No. But, I will listen to it in between podcasts and other things, so I can kind of get an idea of the music and see if I can connect with him on a more personal level, even though I don't really like music. So, but we'll have him on with us Thursday. We're excited about that. Has a fantasy football podcast, is a very famous artist. His music, I've been told, is very good by these two gentlemen who actually like music. So I'll check it out and we'll see what they think. But we will see you guys on Thursday. Thank you guys for dropping in. Stay safe out there.
Yep. Stay safe.
Rock on.
Rock on.